Amidst the rows of corn that grow on gentle slopes of the Green River watershed of Henry County in northwest Illinois, archaeologists are investigating a rare and enigmatic site. The location is one of a small number of Paleo-Indian sites in Illinois, dating to between 8,000 and 10,000 years before the present. But what is more remarkable is that evidence indicates that it was only occupied for a brief period of time, and for the seemingly singular purpose of a fire-related ritual, possibly as part of a wider cultural network in the middle of North America.
The dig is being led by archaeologist Dr. Thomas Loebel, who, along with several colleagues, university students, high school students, archaeological societies, and volunteers, have spent hundreds of hours carefully sifting through, section by section, of the thin clayish soils that bind the corn to the earth. They are in search of the smallest of artifacts, lithics, small flakes of chert, which taken all together suggest something unusual occurred on these slopes more than 8,000 years ago.
The site was first discovered in 2000, when local archaeology enthusiasts Ken and Jeff Hipskin came upon various broken projectile points while surface collecting the properties of the DeWulf family. They brought the site to the attention of Tom Loebel, who noticed that the materials were late Paleo-Indian in age. Excited by the possible discovery of an uncommon paleo site, Loebel, along with colleagues Mathew G. Hill of the University of Iowa and Robert Hassenstab of the University of Illinois, organized the first formal excavation of the site in 2009 as part of a University of Illinois at Chicago Archeological Field School.
Over the course of 2 field seasons in 2009 and 2010, using surface collection and test unit excavations, they collected and carefully mapped more than 3,500 lithic fragments, spread over a 1,200 square meter study area. Most of the fragments were found within a 300 square meter area, with the remainder believed to have been spread outward from this core due to centuries of erosion and recent plowing activity. They noted that the lithic materials, galena and blanding cherts, were from sources in northwest Illinois and southwest Wisconsin, and that intriguingly, the more local chert sources just a few miles distant were not represented in the collection. Further, the fragments almost all consisted of finished or nearly finished stone points, meaning that the tools had not been manufactured on site, but had been made elsewhere and brought into the DeWulf location. But even more tantalizing is that they noticed that the lithic assemblage showed definitive signs of intentional breakage, as well as damage due to intense heat and fire.
In 2012, Thomas Loebel and Mathew Hill published a paper in Illinois Antiquity, a quarterly publication of the Illinois State Museum, describing the DeWulf site for the first time and laying out their findings. Taking all of their observations together, the manufacture of stone tools from non-local chert material, the importation of nearly complete stone tools to the site, and the purposeful destruction and burning of these tools, all strongly suggested to them that the DeWulf site was a single-use site, involving the intentional destruction of valued tools and belongings. In fact, this sort of activity has been noted in many ancient cultures throughout the world. The purposeful breaking of weapons, jewelry, and other personal belongings as a sacrifice to ancestors or higher powers, or perhaps to release the spirit of the object.
Loebel and Hill went further, as they also noted the same sort of ritual activity had been previously described at other Paleolithic sites in the upper Midwest of the United States and Middle Canada. They linked the DeWulf site to this wider cultural network, referred to as the Rainier Ceremonial Complex, which has been associated with at least 9 other Paleo-Indian sites in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ontario, and which likewise all showed purposeful destruction and burning of stone tools and points.
The designation of ritual has long been met with some degree of skepticism and controversy in archaeology, as it can be difficult to interpret the exact meaning of certain artifacts without having complete knowledge of the context. The meaning of the DeWulf site, as well as the Rainier Ceremonial Complex, has been openly debated in archaeological circles for some time. But the science of archaeology moves on and continues to collect information and evolve interpretations with new evidence.
As there is a concern that the DeWulf location may eventually be overrun with new housing and subdivisions, Dr. Loebel had been anxious to get back to the site. In 2020, Loebel was granted permission by the landowners to continue on with the investigation and to draw out more of the site's information hidden in the ground. Over the course of 2 seasons, starting in the autumn of 2020 and completing a year later in 2021, Loebel and his team of archaeologists, students, and volunteers excavated more than 400 additional square meters of the site. For each of the 1-meter test units, they excavated several inches below the thin topsoil, sifted the excavated earth for lithics and artifacts, and carefully recorded and mapped all of the finds.
We were fortunate to have participated in the autumn 2021 excavations, working alongside dedicated professionals and students, as well as enthusiastic amateurs and volunteers, enjoying their camaraderie and sharing the thrill of the occasional find. Participants quickly learned to tell the difference between stone sherds and the small lumps of ag, as they are called, limestone additives to the brownish clay soils, or the decomposing bits of corn kernels and stalks. Crew members quickly sort themselves into diggers and sifters. Diggers demonstrate keen shovel control skills, carefully shaving off half-inch increments at a time from the test pit surface. Sifters try to keep up with the buckets of dirt being emptied into their trays, while keeping a keen eye out for artifacts. Dr. Loebel and a few of his colleagues meanwhile busily coordinate the activity of the crew, ensure that the artifacts are being bagged and mapped appropriately, and survey out the next set of test units to be excavated.
During a break in the dig, we spoke with Dr. Loebel about the DeWulf Site project. Hello, we're at the DeWulf Site in Henry County, Illinois with Tom Loebel of the Illinois Archeological Survey. And Tom very nicely invited us to join the crew out here today as part of the archaeological dig that's been ongoing for
about a year now, so we've been back. So being as September is Illinois Archeological Awareness Month, the DeWulf Site provides a really good example of a professional and a public archaeological program. The site is registered with the Illinois State Archeological Survey. It is officially known as 11HY 296, 11 being the abbreviation for the state of Illinois, HY for Henry County, and this was the 296th archaeological site registered in the county. So that's what we know as known as the Smithsonian Trinomial System, and that's how we track and record sites. The site dates to what we call the late Paleo-Indian period, or about 9,500 years ago. And we've been able to date the site on the stylistic attributes of the artifacts being found here. Primarily the projectile points, which are lancelet in shape and display a very unique kind of an oblique parallel flaking pattern, which is very distinctive to a class of artifact or a culture known as Angostura, and so we call this Angostura-like. And so based on those similarities and knowing that sites out west with this type of artifact have been dated to about the 9,900, 500 year range. So by that inference, we've been able to typologically assign this site to about that age frame. Now there's two things that make this site really important besides its age. Sites of this age are rare, so we don't have a lot of them. But number two, most sites that in the archaeological record that we come across are habitation sites. So sites where people stayed for a short period of time. It could have been a day, it could have been a week, sometimes longer. But where we see evidence of everyday activity. So it's the things that they used, they made, they discarded, the remnants of everything, the everyday camp life that got left behind. So, but what's unique about this site is we don't have evidence for habitation, but we do have evidence for occupation. So there's a kind of a different thing going on here, and it's the stone tools that we've been recovering from the site which tell that very interesting story. So if people weren't living here, what were they doing here? And so for me as an archaeologist, as a specialist in stone tools, these things can tell a story if you know how to kind of decipher them and read them. And so the site was found by an avocational collector named Kenny Hipskin, and I met Kenny a long time ago, and he had some things from this site, and including some material called Hixton silicified sandstone, which comes from over 200 miles away up in Wisconsin. So that was the unusual, right, to find that. And so when we see the movement of materials, that can tell us about the movement of people, right, or the movement of materials within a social system.
I was going to say, in your paper, you note that there's a much closer source of chert, Moline.
Right.
Chert, so that's why it's so unusual to bring it in from afar.
Right, so there's a couple of raw materials here, a Silurian blanding, which is from about 50 miles away, and some Galena chert, which basically is up in southwest Wisconsin. So we have all these raw materials from fairly far away being brought in, and so that was unusual. And then the age, but then looking at Kenny's collection, I noticed that a lot of the points and some of the things appeared to have been intentionally broken. So that was the first big question. Are people breaking these through use, or are these things being broken for another reason? So Kenny had, after a while, I asked him to go back out, and it was clear he was picking up some things, but not everything. And I said, Kenny, pick everything up next time. And he kind of looked at me and he said, well, okay. And just a couple months later, I saw him, and he had 2 big Ziploc bags full of material. And so sites of this age, usually there's a small amount of material, a small group size, brief duration. They don't leave a lot, so the archaeological footprint is very small. But all of a sudden it was like, holy cow, this is really something different now. And so that's what prompted us to start to begin professional investigation out at the site.
So, Tom, how often do you come out? Have you been coming out to this site to dig?
So we first started work out here in 2008 and 2009 with a field school at the University of Illinois. And that also involved a bunch of the local avocational archaeologists assisting. So we had students out here, and we did some surface collections and mapping, the surface distribution of materials on the site, and a few test units. Came back the next year, we did another surface mapping, and each one of these surface collections yielded an impressive amount of material, and so everything got piece plotted. So pretty soon we had a surface map of about 1,500 items, which showed us a fairly dense surface concentration, and that's what we used to guide the placement of our excavation units. In 2009 and then 2010, we made plans to come back, but in the interval, the land had changed hands, and we didn't have permission until again last year. So 10 years we were waiting to get back on the site. And we got a call from the farm manager, who's just been an absolute supporter of our project, and we've been very fortunate to work with him. And now the family trust is very supportive of our work out here. But the great story has been the involvement of the public in this project. We would not have been able to do a project of this scale. We've excavated over 350 square meters so far of the site without the support of the community. So a lot of people have come together, and to me, I think as a scientist, archaeology is really unique in that we can immediately and directly involve the public in hands-on part of science, right? They can immediately make a contribution. You don't have to come out and know anything. We can get you trained in, up to speed. We need people screening the dirt, and so the public has made an immense contribution to the science of Illinois archaeology through this, and it's been great. It's been very gratifying and a lot of fun. And so we've been, trying to actively involve students. We've had students from Knox College come out. We've got students from North Central College, College DuPage, and there's been over 20 professional archaeologists involved. Earlier this year, we had over 90 different individuals who had come out and contributed well over 200 person days of effort into the site. So it's been a real professional public collaboration, and it's been really a good experience, a great experience.
If someone was interested in joining a future dig, I mean, how would they find out when it was, and how would they ask permission, apply? I don't know, what's the procedure for them to be able to come if they can?
Well, I mean, we've been able to, just by word of mouth and using a network of folks that we know, really rally a great workforce out there. But we welcome new volunteers anytime. We'll probably be excavating out here through this fall before we cease our operations. And so people can contact me. I'm with the Illinois State Archeological Survey if anybody's interested. And we've had good luck through social media, so on Facebook and things like that. So through the Illinois State Archeological Society, which is the amateur, kind of the collector group, working with the general community and the collectors and the avocationals. The average everyday person can become quickly what I call a citizen scientist and make a real contribution to what we know about the past. And if you think about it, archaeology is one of the few ways we can really get at the past history before written word was. Oral histories certainly enhance the stories with Native American input, but archaeology, in terms of telling the vast story of human prehistory, is really the only way we're going to ever get at it. So it's really important to preserve the archaeological record and educate the public about why it's important to do it, because we're going to get one chance at telling what I'd like to think of as a common story for all of humans across the globe. It's something that unites us.
Yeah, agreed. Well, so thank you very much for inviting us here today, Tom.
It's been a pleasure to have you, and we hope you come back.
We will.
We hope to.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is still much to be learned from this singular site in northwest Illinois, near the Green River in Henry County. What was the nature of this fire and destruction ritual? What brought Paleo-Indian people to this place? Why here? And what cultural practices were they sharing from other places? We gaze through a glass darkly at the early world of the Paleo-Indian culture, interpreting fragmentary evidence and teasing out meanings. Locations such as the DeWulf Site give us intriguing glimpses into this long-vanished world. Dr. Loebel and his colleagues are hoping to shine even more light on this fascinating subject as their research continues.